Hey, what's up, everybody? Finally got my kids asleep, so I thought I'd do a quick video because I keep getting asked, or I see people commenting, what do I need for a streaming PC? What's up, Creepy? I got you a new intro. Talking about the PC intro or your intro? Good. It took me a while. I had to go through a lot of stuff to kind of find something that fit you, or what I thought might fit you, based on your channel. Oh, my intro? Okay, so let's go over to Mixer here and take a look at my profile here. Okay, so this summer I rebuilt a new PC, and I hadn't went AMD since 1995. This is my old last AMD board I had. So the reason I switched back to Intel back then was because AMD ran really hot, and they were kind of just a economical chip next to Intel. So if you wanted something that was the same speed but paid less money, you always went with AMD. But then you had heat issues and stuff like that. So it was a long time before, well, up until last year, that AMD actually, in my opinion, overtook Intel as far as processor wise. I mean, Intel's still a great chip. Honestly, I still think they run better than AMD. But this the new Ryzen, when it came out, the 3900X, the 12 core in the $500 range, I mean, that was just kind of a beast of a PC. And Intel didn't really have anything in that range. They had an 18 core that was almost $2,000. Or if you wanted to go with the what was it, the i9, yeah, 9700K was the other processor. So I think, now, because that's only an 8-core processor as well. But one of the things that turned me on to AMD this last iteration was the X570 chipset. And the X570 chipset, what they have over Intel is PCI Express 4, which current gen cards right now, you're not going to max out the PCI Express 3.0 because the bandwidth on it is so high. There's no game out right now that's actually pushing the limits, unless Crysis supposedly Crysis is coming out with a new game, so maybe that'll be the PCI killer. But a lot of people ask me like, what do I need? What'll run slobs, Streamlabs OBS, and things like that. I thought going to this 3900X that, you know, I've heard some streamers have had success streaming in slobs off of the 3900X. My situation hasn't really been that great. I mean, the stream's pixelated. I don't think I have any streams still in my history on Mixer that was on the 3900X to see the difference from then till now. But as soon as I switched from the CPU rendering over to the the NVIDIA NVENC encoding, it was just night and day difference. But I also have a really high-end GPU too. So I went from a GTX 1080 to an RTX 2080 Ti, and I really didn't have to make that big of a jump. It was just I kept comparing cards and looking, you know, at a 2070, 2080, and then NVIDIA threw the 2080 Super out there, and that kind of threw me for a loop. And I was kind of a little bit disappointed in NVIDIA doing that, just because you had all these people that bought 2070s, 2080s, 2080 Ti's, and then they dropped this Super out there, and that kind of, it didn't really kill the Ti, but it kind of shortchanged a lot of those people that picked up that 20, and I think the 2070 wasn't NVLink compatible. I don't think they were going to support that, so that was kind of I felt that was kind of a kick in the nuts to the consumer. Great if he hadn't made the leap yet, because some of the super cards were almost just as much as the prior gen, or even cheaper. So I guess the first thing I look at when I go to build a PC is the motherboard, because literally since this, nothing has changed other than they've gotten rid of, you know, the A drive, your old floppy drive, and the 5 1/4 drives. Those are pretty much non-existent anymore. I suppose you could still hook one up. There's still an option in BIOSes to have a floppy on some PCs. I don't know why the hell you would ever want to do that. I guess I still have some games that I still have on floppy. I guess I could load up. But the motherboard is your central piece to your whole PC. So that's going to be your most critical component of the whole entire build. Everything else is kind of, you know, it's going to be, you're either going to have the high end, or you're going to have somewhere in the middle, or you're going to have something lower end. The motherboard is probably it's the most critical, because that's what everything plugs into. So when you make the decision of cutting back on a card, or cutting back on a CPU, maybe not getting the highest end that's available, you want to look at your board, because you want to see, okay, if I were to get the higher end CPU later on down the road, or a bigger graphics card, is the board I'm buying now going to support that card or that CPU later on? So that's what I look at when I go to select and do a build. And just behind me, I have a PC I built in 2010 that's a X58 chipset, maxed out with a Xeon processor. It's the biggest processor you can get. I only paid like $100 for it. I think when that processor was new, it was probably $2,000 or $3,000. And then I maxed out the memory at 24 gigs of DDR3. But I can put a 1080 card in that, and I can run Warzone, and it runs fine. I mean, that 1080 might bottleneck a little bit because of the bandwidth, but with a little bit of overclocking on that board, you can actually make up for some of that bottleneck by overclocking the RAM. So I overclocked the RAM, and then it ran fine. So when I did my build, this is the board that I went with. This 570 MSI creation. I hadn't had a MSI board before. I used to go Asus all the time, or Asus, however you want to say that. And then EVGA was kind of my go-to because EVGA's tech support was really good. MSI's okay. If you get the right person on the phone. I had to deal with them on my board over a network issue, but so the things I did when I went to go select that. So the first decision is if you're going to go AMD or are you going to go Intel. So if you're going to go Intel, you want to know what these chipsets. So Z390, or like I said on the AMD. Let's see here. Let's go to components, motherboards. Okay, so you're going to have Intel and AMD. So let's click on the Intel. So you can go through here and you can click Alright, so you can go through here and click on, and I think the Z390 current Intel chipsets. So let's go to this i9. Yeah, the 9900K. Processor specs. And it should tell us well, maybe. Pretty sure that's 9th gen, the Z390. Yeah, supports Intel 8th and 9th gen. So that's one thing to look at too. See if the board's going to support an older 8th gen in case you want to get an 8th gen CPU, and then later you want to go to a 9th gen CPU. Sometimes you'll get lucky and future releases of CPUs, like if they go 10th gen and Intel gets down to the 7 nanometer. I don't know. Let's look at that 9900K. I don't know specifications. So the 7 nanometer, so it's still a 14 nanometer. That was the other reason why I went AMD 3900X, because they're on a 7 nanometer. That just means how tight they're packing that stuff in on that chip. And the closer and the tighter they can pack it, the faster that thing's going to run. It's basically a distance thing. At least that's what it used to be. Okay. So let's go over to the 3900X, the AMD chip. And they've recently, in November, they released the 3950, which if you have the budget, I would go with this one. This is a 16 core, so you're getting a few more cores. I don't know if it's necessarily worth the leap because this one's almost $500. I've seen them on sale as low as around the 400 range at dock appointments. Okay. But you know, to get 4 more cores for almost double the price. I mean, if it goes on sale, I would pick this one up. But let's go ahead and click on that, and then we'll look at the specifications on it. So see, here's a manufacturing tech. There's 7 nanometers. So the lower this number is, the better, the faster the technology is. But your PCI Express revision is 4.0. So let's go back to the home page. So now we're going to go to components. So the other thing on the motherboard, and then just for giggles, we're going to go AMD, and I'll show you how I narrowed down, because when you go in here, you're going to see a ton of boards, and to narrow them down is going to be kind of daunting. So this is going to be an AM4 chipset. And then we also want to go, we want to filter it to the X570, because the X570 is going to be your 4.0 PCI Express. So with those two things clicked, we'll hit apply, and that's going to filter out our boards. And we're going to go highest price to lowest. Jesus, $1,000 board. The Godlike has went up. The Godlike, this is what I was looking at, but it wasn't $956. That thing's went up in price. Look at mine. Oh my God. Well, I might sell my board. I paid $500 for it, and they're selling it for $883. And you can't get it. That's crazy. Okay, so get distracted. So then some of these boards are going to be ATX, extended ATX, and this is going to come down to what type of case you're going to need for your board to fit into. So we really don't want to filter by that unless we know specifically we want like a mini ITX and we're building like a home-based home theater PC or something like that. So right now we'll leave that, and obviously we want new. Brand, if you're brand specific, then you can click by brand and narrow it down by that. But then we're going to go down here to features, and the one thing that I was interested in is these M.2 slots. So what those are, we'll just click on a random board here. What those are going to be are the slots. These are covered up. Let me find one where they're not covered up. There's heat sinks over the top of them. Looks like this one. Yeah, here we go. So right here, there's a little slot right here. And then there's 1, 2, 3 different standoffs there. Most of them are going to extend out to this last post here. So basically it's like a little stick drive. I don't think I have one laying around here. It's basically a little stick, and that's your hard drive. And they attach straight into the board here. You just plug them in. There's 2 different types, so you have to watch what you're buying. Because some are just SATA and some are PCI Express, and they're different. The connectors on them are different. So these are going to be PCI Express slots on there. So I was interested in that, and I wanted the most that I could have. And I'm not sure why it's not showing ×4. So when I did mine, it had a ×4 slot there. So here's another thing to look at if you want 4 PCI Express 4.0 16 speed slots. You can click that. That just means you can put 4 GPUs in there. So it's going to come down to the Godlike. So that narrowed it down pretty quick. So if you were wanting 4 PCI Express 4.0 slots, that would be your board. So that's what you'd be spending on your board. If you didn't need that, let's say 2 cards were just sufficient. It's going to bring us back here to quite a few boards. And then we'll go through here and let's see. So audio channels, wireless LAN, if you want wireless 6.0. I don't know if that's I don't know which one that is, ACAX. Not sure. AX is going to be Wi-Fi 6. So AX would be the Wi-Fi 6, which is a lot faster. So that actually narrows it down pretty good. So we're going to have capability of dual GPUs and Wi-Fi 6 built onto the board. So of these three boards, they're all going to be ASRock, so we don't really have a manufacturing issue there. This Steel Legend or this Extreme. So then you can click on compare, and how do we execute that? Oh, there we go, compare. So we'll put them side by side. So it's Extreme and a Legend, and then it threw some other ones down here. But we're not interested in those because those did not fit our criteria. So they're both X570s, obviously, because that's what we filtered. They're both going to support the same CPUs. They're both going to support 128 gigs of RAM. They're both dual channel. They both have three times PCI Express slot. Just trying to find the difference here. Supports auto lip sync, deep color. Supports HD CP 2.2 with HDMI 2.0. Supports 4K Ultra HD playback, which doesn't matter because it's going to be based on the GPU we select. So these boards are pretty close as far as specs wise. Power pin. 1x8, 1x, those are all the same. This one just looks longer. So pretty much the same board. So I guess if I would probably go with this Steel Legend board here and save that extra money that's over here and spend it on my GPU. So moving on to the GPU. So now we have our board selected. So once we select our board, then we want to write down what layout it is. If it's a ATX or an extended ATX. So the form factor is going to be ATX. So we want to keep note of that. So we cannot get a case any smaller than an ATX case, which most cases are ATX anyway, unless they're if it's an extended ATX, it'll still fit. Extended ATX is what this board is. So it's just a smidge too long to fit into an ATX case. So it kind of narrowed down the amount of cases I could get. But this would be a pretty solid board for a build. You know, it's not too expensive. It's not too cheap. It's kind of right in the middle of the road. To me, a high-end board's around $400 or $500. A low-end board's anywhere from 100 to, well, mid-range, 100 to 200. And then sub 100 is kind of an economy board. But even some of the sub 100 boards are not that bad. Actually, my last build was a sub $100 board that I had a i5 8600K on, and it ran fine. Okay, so going to our GPU. So now we want to select the GPU. I'm really partial to NVIDIA. I just don't think AMD is quite there yet to compete with NVIDIA. The only card that they've released that I think kind of gives NVIDIA a run for their money, or at least it's a good budget card. I wouldn't say budget. I mean, it's a decent card. Is that RX 5700 XT? So it's a pretty decent card for what it is. Let's see here. So there's two of them, the 5700 XT and the 5700. I'm not exactly sure what the difference between those two are. If you're not sure, just Google them, or you could go on here and you can actually this is user benchmark website. So if we were going to compare two different cards, we could compare cards. So let's go here, compare. And let's say, and you could start, you know, in NVIDIA, let's go 2070s Super. All right, so pop that one in there. Versus 5700 XT. We'll just go to standard one. You know, and we can kind of compare the two cards. So, you know, only has 26% more nice to haves. So if we go back to Newegg and we go 2070 Super. Are we still sorted high to low? There's two of them in the $400 to $500 range. Where are they? Gigabyte out of stock. Let's go lowest. So around $500. 5700 XT. $379. But the point of this video is streaming, so I'm not going to look at the. I'm not even going to compare these. We're strictly looking at NVIDIA cards. So we want to look at and see which cards. RTX NVENC encoder. Let's see here. Let's see which lineups they have that have the encoder. New OBS optimized for maximum FPS. So this RTX is built for what we're trying to achieve and accomplish here. So we want an RTX card. And they also have this guide, and it has some good stuff in here. You know, do a speed test. We want to use around 75% of your upload speed as the game and other programs, such as Discord, will also fight for bandwidth. It's going to go through recommended settings, what you want to put in your OBS, and this should translate over to Streamlabs as well. Your output for streaming and or for recording, and then Windows has this game mode setting now after Windows 10 version 1903, so you want to make sure that's enabled. That'll help Windows allocate resources to your game and to Streamlabs or OBS. And then some of your advanced settings. That goes over a lot of that stuff down here. So this works really well. And as far as that board, let's say you want to spend more on your GPU than you want on your CPU. There's some other good Ryzen. I don't know if they're all Ryzen 9. Let's just type in Ryzen 9. So the Ryzen 9 is just going to be the 3900 and the 3950X. But if we go Ryzen, I don't think they have an 8. I think it's 7. Yeah, it's 7. Goes 3.5. It's all odd numbers. 3.579. So I think I saw the 3600X was actually on sale. But like this 3700X, it's an 8 core for $298. chips listed here. 1700X 8 core. I would look at this 2700X or higher. So there's going to have a 2700X, 3600X, 3700X, 3800X. And it looks like all those are going to be 8 core processors. Alright, so then we're going to go to RAM. Where's our board we picked out? That's Steel Legend. I know a lot of people say PC part picker, which is fine. That should. I don't know if they use a QVL list. A QVL list is the memory that will specifically work with this board. So when you look at your specs here, it should tell you. So it supports 128 gig. It's obviously going to be DDR4 memory, but it supports all these speeds here. So the sweet spot is around 3200 megahertz, and if you like all this RGB stuff, Corsair makes some really good stuff. Corsair's kind of been in the memory game for a while, but let's go. You're going to want a minimum of 16 gig. I would recommend 32 gigabyte of DDR4. 16 is going to be fine though. But the reason why I'd say 32, and if you can afford it, 64 gig, because this board's going to support 128 gig. So if you go 64 gig in 2 sticks, that'll leave 2 other slots open for memory expansion later down the road that you can add in the remainder of the 128 gig. Do you need 128 gig? Probably not. You probably don't even need 64. 32 gigs, pretty good, you know, mid-range. Going higher, you're kind of wasting it. If you're doing more video editing and stuff, the more RAM you can have is obviously better. You know, like Photoshop or rendering videos and stuff like that. It definitely helps. But like these Corsair, like this set right here, this would be perfectly fine right here. This Vengeance Pro, and you got the RGB to make it run faster. So that's easy. And then you're going to have your hard drive. And we want NVMe sticks is what we want. That's what we want to put our OS on. So these Samsung Evos are good, but these are going to have speed specs to them too. So if you want, since we got a PCI Express 4 board, if you want to utilize the most you can out of your board, you get one of those. They're going to be really expensive. They are coming down though. This Sabrent right here, that's actually not a bad deal. At 120 bucks. It's 500 gigs, so it'll hold your OS. Or this Corsair. I don't particularly care for these because if your motherboard has a heatsink built in, I'm not sure if these come pre-installed or not, but you would have to most likely remove that to get it to install. These are nicer because they lay flat and they're out of the way of everything. Expansion cards, things like that. What's up, laddie? Doing a video on picking PC parts. I'm doing a build. Everybody keeps asking me, so I just thought I'd go over my opinions on what I thought, and they can take it for what it's worth. But I actually might buy one of these. That's actually a pretty good deal. Specifications. So this is going to run, your max read is 5,000 megabytes per second. Max write is 2,500 megabytes per second. So these things are super fast. Just give you a comparison. If you go back to some of these other cheaper brands, not cheaper brands, but just lower end speed wise, like let's go to, let's click on this one. So this is the same brand, almost the same size. We go to the specs, and it's going to run a little slower. This is still fast though. I mean, sequential read 3,400 megabytes per second, sequential write 2,000 megabytes per second. And then when I was talking earlier about the SATA drives, of course we searched for NVMe, so let's go up here to go to SATA. And this is where you have to watch on buying these, because if you get one that's a SATA drive, you don't really want to shop by price, you want to shop by specs. You want to make sure you're getting the right specs. Because if you go to the SATA drive, these are 560 megabytes per second, and the sequential write is 530 megabytes per second. So they're fine if that's what you want, but these are going to be the same or no different than like a drive like this. Your regular SATA drive. They're going to run the same speed. So you got to watch that. Plus the connection is going to be different on those, on the SATA versus the NVMe. So you need to watch out for that too. Make sure your board's going to support that slot. So you have to look at your specifications on your board and make sure that those fit. The nice thing about these stick drives though is you don't have to run any cables. So cable management's awesome. They basically just go right into your board. One of the reasons why I went with this board here was because they had this secondary card that houses 2 more of those drives. There's 2 on the board and 2 on there. So I could have 4 of those things running. So if I wanted to put 1 terabytes in 4 of those, I'd have 4 terabytes of this insanely fast hard drive space. So it definitely helps, like on load times, loading into games. Let's see here. All right, so we went over processor, graphics card, RAM, and then our hard drive. Now, if you want to add a secondary hard drive, you can. So if you just go to, I've been finding these cheap refurbished drives. So let's punch in like 3 terabyte. We'll sort these by price. Like these IntelliPowers. I think these are like enterprise drives. Let's see what speed on them is. I'm going to try to get a 7200 RPM drive. And it doesn't say. Aftermarket generic. It's like the Satoshi. I don't know what these two are. I would probably steer clear of those. Seagate is okay. Western Digital is kind of the go-to for me. I've always had Western Digital. I really haven't had any problems with them. But like if you wanted to add some storage off to the side that wasn't speed, you know, if you were doing like video editing and stuff, you want to dump some stuff or have like your working folder where as you're working on a project, stuff's getting stored in cache. You can definitely have that, or store files or whatever, and then you can probably add, you know, 2 or 3 of those to your system fairly cheaply. And you could also even put those in a RAID setup, so they're either redundant or it'll alert you when they're about to go bad. Let's see. All right, so what do we got left? I guess a monitor, power supply. So depending on the graphics card you pick, your power supply will be dependent. I believe there is a power supply search. Power supply needed. calculator. So it's going to be a desktop, and we're going to have one CPU. Let's say we're going to get a 3900X, and memory, we'll say we'll put some 16 gig DIMMs in there. Let's say 2, 0 there. Let's say we filled 2 slots up. Let's go NVidia card. Let's say we get a 2070 Super. Wherever the hell it is. Oh, it's up top here. Let's say we got one of those, and storage. We're gonna say we're gonna get one of those, and a SATA 7200 RPM. What's up, Fubars? Always coming in with the love, man. Old Fubars, bringing all these peeps. I'm just going over on how to build a streaming PC. I was just doing a video, actually. I was going to record it and then upload it to YouTube. So that way it can be forever relished. Right now I'm going over how to pick your power supply, or like how much power you're going to need. We didn't add any PCR cards. We're going to have a keyboard mouse, obviously. And then our USB, let's say we're going to have one. Each of those, and we'll have, let's say, 520 millimeter fans, and we'll have a cooling kit on our CPU. Let's go, let's say we're going to put a Hydro 80 on there. And a monitor, we're going to have one, and we'll go middle of the road, 27 inches. Gaming editing. So we're going to need 537 watts. But I would go, you're not want to get a 530 watt or a 600 watt. You want to go a little bit bigger because you don't want to use every single ounce of wattage, otherwise it's not going to work. So it's recommending 850. So we want to go 850 watts or bigger, and we'll go gold or platinum. So a lot of these, let's go power supply. Let's go back to the home page. So we're going to go components, and let's see, power supplies. So we can search by the ratings. This is basically how efficient the things are running. So let's go, gold is usually pretty good. You can go platinum or titanium, but let's see, we don't want these or those. We want to go 850 or a little higher. So the Seasonics are really good. Those are going to have a 10-year warranty on them. And I've actually warrantied one of those before, and they do pretty good on taking care of it, sending it back. You just have to send the unit, no cables or nothing, and then they'll send you a new unit back. And then you're gonna look at the difference in, I like the modular ones, even the fully modular. Fully modular is gonna mean that inside your case, you're gonna have to plug in the cables you need. So I like this for cable management, because you're obviously gonna have your motherboard power down here at the bottom, and then depending on how many components you put inside your PC will depend on how many of those other slots you'll take. So some of these cables, like let's look at these top ones. So this has one plug here, but it's got three SATA connectors. So you have one of these plugged in, and those additional hard drives you actually put in there, you can run 3 drives off just this one cable. But since you wouldn't have it all full, I would recommend doing maybe 2 off this one and then plugging another one in and then running that remainder off one single, just to kind of distribute the power a little bit. So it's not, running 3 drives off one power connector. Or you could do 3 of them and run one connector each one. But each time you add more and more cables, you're going to have more and more cables to tuck away. So this EVGA power splitter is not too bad. Alright, so we got that. Now the final thing we're going to look for is a computer case. And this is going to be very subjective to the individual, what they want or desire or what catches their eye. I usually stick with name brand stuff like Corsair. But since we already know our motherboard is an ATX board, we're going to go to cases. We're just going to filter this down. So you're going to have basically a mid tower or a full tower. Or you can go ATX super tower, ATX cube, open frame case, if that's what you prefer. And we can click all these. ATX mini tower, ATX super tower. Those ATXs I think should work with an ATX, but I would just stick with these ATX filters. And then we'll hit apply. And that's going to filter that down. And then we can search by price, by highest to lowest. We'll just we'll scroll down here and see what other kind of. We obviously want USB 3.0. So we may want to, let's see here, external, should be external. Fan options. Front ports, here we go. This eSATA is a little bit older stuff. That's so you can basically plug in a eSATA device. Audio controls. We can look at those. Audio and controls. There we can go 2.0, 3.0 audio. This can be your headphone or your microphone jack. Here's one with USB Type C. That's what I have. I have a USB Type C on the top. And, or if we just want USB 3.0, 3.1 Type C audio, that's an option. You know what, let's go right here. This is kind of the mix of all of it. 2.0, 3.0, and 3.1 Type C and audio. Well, these are really bland. And then if we want to go by a certain brand, let's filter that down. Whoa, that's too many filters. Let's take that off. Side panel, color, yeah, manufacturer. Oh, yeah, right here. There's only 4 manufacturers. Let's go Thermaltake and Cooler Master. Alright, so we got it narrowed down. Obviously, this isn't going to be all inclusive, so there's probably some other filters that we could take off and make some others available, but it's those front ports that's really filtering that down. But those are really nice features to have. So let's say we want to get real crazy and go with this thermal take here. So this is kind of a closed / open air case. Which looks okay, I guess. I wonder if it comes apart like that. Or it comes in the box in pieces. God dang, that'd be... This is really slick up here though. So it's got your headphone jack, your hard drive light, your reset button, your microphone, 2.0, 3.0, 3.0, USB-C, and a power button. So that's kind of nice. There's your expansion slots on the back. So that wouldn't be bad. Here, let's start adding all this to a cart. See where we're at here. Alright, we got everything picked out. Let's say we're going to go 3900X. This one. There. Not add to the cart. There we go. 3 items. Well, we added too many things here. Oh, we get a free gift. Alright, then we had our Corsair 3200 DDR4 memory. It's going to be... That's a 16 gig. We were going to go... Yeah, look at the price difference. Doubling your memory up. 126 versus 164. That's kind of crazy. Let's go with the white. I don't really know exactly what the difference between those two are. Let's go with the white stuff to match our case. And let's go with this one, since it's white. I wonder if EGVA makes a white one. They sure don't. Everything's black. Alright, and then our Steel Legend X570 board. And that was this one for the Wi-Fi 6. No thanks. And then our 3 terabyte hard drive. So I've been using these refurbished ones and they're working great. Say we want 2 of those, we'll put 2 in there. And then we want a 2070 Super. Brand on this doesn't really matter at all. I mean, I prefer EVGA cards. I had a Gigabyte 1080, really good card. PNY, if you sell your card, they will not honor the warranty. Third party to third party. EVGA will honor warranty. Asus will honor. PNY is the only one I know of that won't honor like if you go to sell that, the warranty to the new owner. Let's go with this one. So I'll add that. And so we're at $2,000. So we have our case. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, you don't have to spend $250 on a case. You could probably get a $50 case and be just fine. But like I said, the central piece of your computer is going to be that motherboard. So if you want to spend more money on that, that's what I would do, and cut the other stuff back and then upgrade later down the road, because that motherboard is going to be the centerpiece of your whole entire system. And if you have to make a change to that motherboard, you may have to change some of this other stuff because it may not be compatible anymore, or it may not fit. There's our 2070 Super. I mean, we can remove one of these drives too. We don't have to have 2-3 terabyte drives. Alright, and then we need our NVMe 4.0 drive. Where'd that Sabrin go? This one here. This will be our main OS. So we'll install Windows onto this drive. And then if you wanted to take, even if you wanted to take both these drives off and then go with a something like this, like a Crucial 1 terabyte. This isn't going to be the speeds specs we looked at earlier, but it's still going to be a 2,000 megabytes a second read, 1,700 megabytes a second write. I mean, they're super fast. That's still faster than snot. I mean, your PC will boot in seconds on these drives. They boot in seconds on the regular SATA drives. Let's see here. So we got 10 items, or around $2,000. And that number, I mean, we could drop that a little bit, but that kind of gives you an idea of what you're looking at as far as a pretty decent streaming computer setup. I know people are going dual PCs. They'll use one PC to capture the other. I don't really know what that capture PC would necessarily have to have in it. I wouldn't think it would take much, because you're going to be putting a capture card into that thing. So you probably don't even need a really high-end GPU. You could probably just use onboard GPU if it comes on the motherboard. Some of these capture cards out here. I was looking at this NVidia 4K. It had decent reviews. Elgato, they're just extremely expensive. Most of these capture cards are expensive. Capture cards never used to be this much money. This one had spotty reviews. This Live Gamer HD2, but they had this newer card come out. This NVidia game streaming capture card Live 4K. A lot of people use these Elgato 60s here for their Xboxes. But I'm assuming this is what you would have to throw in there. You have to throw in some kind of thing. It's a pass-through is what it is. So you got HDMI going in and HDMI going out, and this card's basically capturing that signal. So there we have it. That's kind of how I go through if I were to do a build and kind of start. I start with that motherboard, narrow that thing down, and then build around it. This is going to be the centerpiece of your whole system. So there's that. I hope everybody enjoyed it. There's a shit ton of people in here.